My mic is on. Should I turn it off?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our evening session. Today we have a dynamic speaker. Her name is Connie Valencia. With almost 2 decades of change management experience, Connie is specialized in IT project management, information, and process improvement. Prior to joining Elevate, she has served instrumental roles in driving results as the Director of Process Improvement for both First Service, Residential, and Office Depot. Without a doubt, Connie practices servanthood, leadership, facilitates enterprise-wide collaboration, and transparent communication. Welcome, Connie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. At this point, Carola, do I share my screen and bring up the slides?
You can, or do you want me to do it for you?
Yeah, if you could manage that, that would, I mean, I can click on the screens, but I just don't know how to bring up if I share my screen, whichever is easier.
Okay. So is that good?
Yep. Nope. That's fine by me. So are we live? We got the audience in front of us?
Yes, they're in front of us.
All right, everybody.
Take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you for attending. This is quite the experience. I've never been through a platform to this caliber before. So hopefully you all are enjoying this virtual experience and getting some good guiding and talking points as well. Because really, this is what it's all about: is sharing thought leadership, concepts, and ideas. As introduced, my name is Connie Valencia. Over the past 2 decades, I've leveraged my audit, risk management, and project management skills to assist organizations in really complex enterprise-wide transformations. Just a brief background on myself, and then we'll get into the presentation. I started my career in public accounting with the rise of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. I'm dating myself. I then made the transition into internal audit. And that led me to enterprise risk management in dealing with the audit committee and chief executives. And right around 2012, I got bit by the transformation bug. I had a unique opportunity to guide a organization that I was calling out some serious risks in. And the audit committee member basically called me out and said, well, if you're so good at calling out what's going wrong, how would you be part of the solution? And I said, you're on. So I was given the opportunity, I was given the reins to steer a large transformation, and I found my passion. So I've been doing that ever since. And I've been leading large scale, one with a merger of equals between 2 Fortune 500 companies, another one for a $1 billion publicly traded company that spun off from their parent company and then transformed from being a decentralized regional operation into becoming a centralized North American operation. And my last major transformation was for a $1 billion state enterprise that was undergoing a massive structural reorganization. And all 3 of these major transformation successes were hinged on the dependency of the organization's ability to formulate, articulate, and communicate strategy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is what I love, specifically strategy and how quickly it changes and the impact it has on our projects. So first, we're going to discuss 3 very different companies that are all facing extreme adversity at the same time. In our case studies, we're going to discuss how each of these companies have responded by applying completely different strategic shifts. One of them has chosen to pivot, another one has adapted to a new normal, and the third one has chosen good old-fashioned perseverance through these tough times. Once we go through the case studies, then we're going to shift and focus the role to our role as project managers. And when your organization rapidly shifts strategy, how to align your projects to the rapid changes that may be going on within your organization. So with any further ado, if you could just click to the next slide. Oh, no, you're on the improvise, adapt, and overcome. There we go. So improvise, adapt, and overcome. It is a mindset that most of you probably are familiar with. If not, it's the Marines' mantra to deal with any physical, mental, or spiritual hardship. And this slogan has become ever more relevant in almost every aspect of our lives today. And we will examine 3 different business strategies that are currently all trying to improvise, adapt, and overcome in very different ways. Next slide. Following the 3 business cases, we're going to discuss project management fundamentals on how to quickly align your projects to your organization's changing strategy by first closing the gap between project managers and strategic value, enhancing transparency through ownership and accountability, and guaranteeing project success by establishing expectations and required behaviors. We'll end with some closing thoughts about how you should never wait to a crisis to examine the fundamentals. However, if you happen to find yourself in a crisis, don't let it go to waste. Then we're going to wrap it up with Q&A. And hopefully you guys will have enough comments and questions that we will have some really good dialogue. My speaking style is better suited for a live audience. I like to ask a lot of questions. I like interacting with everybody, understanding your point of views and addressing questions throughout the presentation. So there's no polls during this presentation. I think we're all polled out, but I will ask you all thought-provoking questions. And please, please, please contribute by sending your comments via chat or an exclamation mark or your favorite emoji. And my lovely assistant, Corella, will be managing all of your comments in chat. And to the best that we can, we're going to try to make this interactive because I really love to hear your thoughts and points of view on some of the topics that we're going to be discussing today. All right, so the pivot strategy. So our first business case is analyzing how Kodak is currently trying to do a hard pivot in their business strategy. Now, for those who are born after 1990 in the audience, Kodak is an American manufacturer of film and photographic supplies. Back in 1888, not 1988, that's 1888, as in 132 years ago, a man named George Eastman of Eastman Kodak introduced the first portable camera that could be used by amateur photographers. As mentioned, this 132-year-old company is famous for making film photography accessible to the masses and for making the Kodak moment, which was coined phrase when you're pairing up to take a picture. However, back in the 70s, this innovative company failed to capitalize off of its own invention of the digital camera in fear that the technology would eat into their film production sales. Ever since that fateful strategic decision, Kodak has been struggling to find their way in this digital world that we live in the digital world that they helped create. This is where our case study of the pivot strategy begins. In July, the company announced they were shifting away from being a company famous for making camera film to making, and I'm just going to pause for dramatic purposes here because it's a lot to digest, to becoming a generic medicine company to help fight the coronavirus. I mean, talk about a hard pivot in strategy. They went from being a filmmaking company to being a pharmaceutical manufacturer. Their strategy, according to the newspapers, is to leverage a $765 million government loan under the Defense Production Act intended to help companies speed production of drugs in short supply that are considered critical to treating COVID-19. Upon the initial release of this news, Kodak's stock soared. It's since then leveled off to a marginally higher position than before the announcement. But keep in mind, this is not Kodak's first pivot. About 2 years ago, in 2018, Kodak attempted to pivot their business model by capitalizing off of the then fashionable blockchain technology by creating, and I'm going to pause again, there's a lot to digest, the Kodak coin, as they described it. And I'm going to actually read this one here. I had to write this down because I couldn't memorize what their logic was behind the Kodak coin. It's a photocentric cryptocurrency that would empower photographers and agencies to take greater control over image rights management. I know, 2 years later, I still can't figure out what that means, and apparently neither did Kodak. It will be interesting to watch how successful Kodak is in executing the strategy and if they're able to realize the perceived value that their shareholders have invested in. All right, on to the next business case. This one, oh, there we go. This one's a bit more feasible in my opinion. For the last 30 years, Andre Balas, a hotelier who is famous for attracting film stars and media executives and fashion models to his high-end hotels, has been leading the industry with innovative customer experience and chic hotel designs. His most famous hotel being the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles. While the coronavirus has dissipated the industry's highest traveling season this summer, Andre Balas saw a unique opportunity to adapt to a new normal. He is currently considering plans to convert his most famous hotel into a private residential club by the end of the year. He's also looking at international expansion of this new pricing model by creating more members-only properties with annual membership dues worldwide, starting in Milan, Paris, and I believe Tokyo. He's basically shifting his pricing model from being transactional on a nightly basis to an annuity-based subscription. He's also exploring the idea of selling ownership stakes in his properties to guests who become club members and who would own part of the multiple residents in his hotel portfolio. While he's been considering this pricing model transition for years, the coronavirus pandemic has accelerated his plans. The leading driver to his strategy is his customers' needs to feel safe when lodging. His strict screening process and exclusive rights membership will be paired into established guest networks, known friends, and trusted business associates. The bottom line, Mr. Balas is listening to his customers' needs, and he's quickly adapting his business model to meet those needs. Now, many hotels have considered this alternative pricing model, but very few have been successful at accomplishing it. However, Mr. Balas's secret sauce lays within his loyal and highly affluent clientele and his absolute commitment to unique customer experience. So if anybody is well positioned enough to adapt to this new model, I got my chips on Andre Balas's properties. The last and certainly not least final case study that we're going to discuss is my personal favorite from hometown Milwaukee is Harley Davidson. And this is the business case of good old-fashioned perseverance. The iconic U.S. motorcycle company is slowing manufacturing and massively scaling back its sales operations. During the second quarter, Harley Davidson attributed their huge loss to the mandatory pandemic shutdown of their dealerships across the country, which absolutely crushed their second quarter sales. Upon the second quarter's earnings call, the CEO enforced Harley's commitment to their strategy to focus more on key markets and products to drive the bike makers' profitability and overall just growth potential. The cost reduction strategy outlined of about 700 jobs worldwide, 30% fewer new motorcycle models will be introduced, and the company will focus on its top best 50 markets in North America, Europe, and Asia, thereby exiting the low volume and unprofitable international markets. I believe I read an article a couple of weeks ago that they've already shut down a massive plant in India, claiming that the tariffs were too high and local competition was too difficult to compete against. So their strategy is to focus on building basically less volume, higher quality, more value-added products to minimize the price reduction. And despite the global shutdown and health crisis, Harley Davidson was still able to sell over 31,000 motorcycles in the US during the second quarter upon reopening their dealerships, which does suggest a pent-up demand exists for the bikes. I personally happen to have two in my garage right now. But only time will tell if perseverance to focus on their core companies will actually pay off. Next slide. So in summary, we got Kodak, who is pivoting away from their strategy of being a global film manufacturer to being a drug manufacturer. In essence, Kodak has realized they're a chemical company, and they're basically repurposing their core processes to make a more relevant product that has a more stable demand that's also backed by the US government. Andre Balas's properties is adapting a new pricing model in order to provide the same level of unique customer service to his loyal clientele. Bottom line is he's listening to his customers, and he's adapting his pricing model to keep his strategy of providing a luxurious experience to his exclusive membership base. And good old Harley Davidson is hunkering down by contracting in non-profitable markets. They're trying to create more demand by producing less of a product line, and they're cutting their cost. It's the old cut, cut, grow strategy. They're sticking to what they do best, doubling down on their core competencies, and hoping they have enough of a quality product to get them through these uncertain times. Now, I've picked these 3 business cases to demonstrate how real companies that have been hit hard by this pandemic and how they're all taking extreme and sudden measures to drastically change their business strategies and operations. As project managers, I invite you all to think about how your organization has been impacted. How has your strategy shifted? And how many of your companies are still operating the majority of their workforce from home? Go ahead and send me a couple of comments in the text box. I'd really like to know some of your feedback on what your operating environment looks like right now. And most importantly, how are you keeping up with these changes? How are your projects being affected? Okay, we can go to the next slide. Oh, next slide, please. There we go. In the 19th century, the Peruvian military genius Karl von Clausewitz coined the frame fog of war, described the uncertainty commanders face in battle. Clausewitz observed that officers who could pierce through this fog, who could reduce relative uncertainty, consistently defeated opponents, even when they were outnumbered and outgunned. This observation directly led to a massive investment in military communication and intelligence, encompassing everything from radio to GPS, radar to satellite. Put simply, better intelligence about your capabilities relative to your adversary's capabilities wins wars. All 3 of these business cases and the global economy, by and large, is under severe attack. Organizations are making fundamental strategic shifts in the fog of war. As project managers, how do we pierce through this fog? How do we reduce relative uncertainty and consistently provide project communication and intelligence to help guide our executives to navigating these treacherous times? I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds for anybody who wants to contribute or share their fog of war story right now. Let me see if I can read it. My company strategy is like Harley. We are traveling businesses and focusing on cruise, coming back. Oh, my heart is with you for the cruise line. I love cruising and also selling more land-based trips now. My first internal audit job was with Norwegian Cruise Line. So my heart is with you guys. It kills me to see what's going on to our cruise lines right now. Repurposing core skills as a chemical company. Wow. Yeah, some extreme stuff's going on. I'm in a pharma and we are in perseverance mode. This is great. Royal Caribbean is in pure survival mode, cutting costs. Yeah, I know you guys are doing some fancy financial footwork over there right now. Your finance guys are doing overtime and trying to keep the boat afloat, pun intended. Working from home for the foreseeable future. Yeah. I just got off the phone with my friend who works for CBRE, the 10-ton gorilla commercial real estate development firm, and they're 100% work from home. It's American Express. We heard the panel, right? She said they're 100% home. It's crazy. All right, thank you guys. Thank you. That really helps me in hearing that you guys are engaged and sending your comments. I really appreciate that. So let's go to the next slide, and we're going to start talking content now. This is where we get into the project management part of the presentation. So let's start by talking about how we're going to close the gap between project managers and strategic value. How well aligned are your projects to the strategic needs of the organization? Do you even know the strategic reasoning behind most of your projects? Are your executive sponsors engaged in providing strategic vision? Fortunately, these are all rhetorical questions. I'm not going to embarrass anybody by taking a poll or ask you all to contribute via chat. But I can tell you, in my 20 years of experience, more times than I care to mention, I've been on a project where not only myself, but the entire team, including the executive sponsor, could not articulate in a consistent and sometimes even coherent fashion the strategic need for the project that it was fulfilling. So how do you get around that one? As the old saying goes, no sail blows fair for a ship with no port. Again, I'm going to pause for 30 seconds. If anybody wants to contribute to this conundrum, how do you get around when you don't know the strategy of your project, the strategic vision, and the purpose of the project? Has anybody been in that situation? I would, for outsourcing companies, we'd help deploy laptop. Okay, so you guys are still on the work from home. Stop and clarify the purpose. Yep, exactly. Yes, Cormac, I absolutely agree. Stop and clarify. And yes, sometimes those projects fail. Thank you, Barbara. Yes, no, you're absolutely right. So over the years, I've gathered some helpful tricks, and I've used to help bridge this gap. And to Cormac and Barbara's point, and thank you, Raquel. Get a sponsor. Yes, it's more common than we believe. This is prevalent. Thank you. Yes, so we're not alone in this. We've all experienced this in some way, shape, or form. Good. So I'm not the only one who's been in this situation. All right. So as you guys are already know, and I'm talking to some good pros here. I like this. I really wish I was in person to meet all of you. First, you try to drum up some support for the project by talking it up to multiple business owners. I intentionally try to seek out influential business owners that I believe have the ear to the top executives or are running a growth segment of the business. I tell them about the project, why my team thinks it's important, and then I ask them if this is a project that they think is valuable, and if so, why? I ask them how this project could benefit from their operations or their strategic plan. Remember, each division owner may not be aligned to the CEO or to the board's strategic plan. Every business line and department head has their own strategic plan. And how we could collaborate together and help one another. Here's where the advice can blow up on you. You have to be prepared to get the feedback that nobody cares about your project. Most business and product owners are strong enough to tell you flat out, I don't see the value in your project. However, even if you work in the nicest organization in the world, and if you can't find a business or a product or a process owner that is interested in your project, you have to be willing to accept the ugly truth that your project has no real value to the organization. And there's a reason why you're not getting the right support. And I've been in this situation before. It's a tough move, especially if you don't have a lot of authority or influence within the organization yet. But you have to have the presence and courage to be willing to cut a dying project. The consequences of not pulling the plug are even worse if you continue to launch a project that has no support. Once you try to turn the project over to the business owners, they'll start sabotaging the project in failed operations. And then they're going to turn around and blame the project that it wasn't properly managed and that it didn't deliver on the value that nobody could seem to tell you that you were supposed to deliver on. This is where doing remote presentations are really hard, because I can't see how many of you are nodding your head and agreeing with me right now. But if you found yourself or know colleagues in this situation, just raise your hand or send an emoji or an exclamation point. Yep. Try to kill it politically. Yep, great advice. If no one steps up, it probably should be killed. That's right. Whoever fights to keep it alive may be your sponsor. Start there. You know what? That's a great point. That's the old King David, right? The two mothers fighting over a baby, and King David says, "Fine, cut the baby in half, and you each get a half." Whoever steps up to support the project may be your project sponsor. That's a really good point, Terry. Thank you. All right. On a more positive note, let's assume the happier path, and you do find some strategic alignment across business lines. The next step is to form a steering committee. However, before you have your first steering committee meeting, you have to have several individual meetings, at least with the key stakeholders and supporters, to number one, make sure they're aligned, and two, that they have clear objectives of what they want the project to achieve. I'm always telling my team, it takes 10 meetings to have one successful meeting. And in fact, the most successful meetings are the ones that get canceled because everybody's aligned and I can manage the update via email or dashboard reporting. Once you finally get to the steering committee meeting, the goal of the meeting should be to focus on two primary objectives. Number one, and you're going to hear this a lot from me, definition of done, D-O-D. And number two, what does good look like? How do we define good? I've been in project meetings where the current state is so chaotic that we can't even define done because we can't agree on where the project begins. In those situations, I pull out my Six Sigma tool belt and we start drafting up current state. By the time you get to level 3 process maps, the project has grown into a full-blown program and you're scrambling to hire more project managers. Finally, once you've actually derived at the strategic objectives of your project, and now you can actually now start the project charter. Once you're crafting the charter, don't forget to improve your project risk and, more importantly, how the team is going to mitigate those risks. More times than I can count 3 months into a project, and it's always 3 months, I swear to God, 3 months into a project, a major project risk will be triggered. Let's say it's lack of XYZ, lack of budget for XYZ project. And that risk mitigation strategy was to buy the alternative cheaper project of 123. That, lo and behold, product 123 doesn't hold up to its value proposition, doesn't quite work out. 3 months down the line, it blows up. When that happens, I'm the first one to pull out that charter and tell everybody who happily signed off on that kickoff meeting 3 months ago and remind them we all agreed to buy product 123 when we knew it was an inferior product. Now, granted, this does not, that tactic doesn't fit the problem, but it certainly puts a stopgap in creating a much bigger problem, which is blaming project management for the current setback in the project. And another one of my common sayings that I say to my team is rule number 1 in project management: don't get shot. Now, if that struck a chord with you, give me a shout out. Aw, thank you, Terry. So far, this is the best useful information today. Thank you. And agree on canceling meetings. Yes, my goal in life is to cancel meetings. Absolutely, I live for canceling meetings. That is exactly what I tell my team, and this is why they like me. All right, and while you guys are processing rule number 1 of not getting shot, don't forget your team roles and responsibilities. I know the RACI chart seems like project management elementary school. However, there's a reason why the body of knowledge has accepted the RACI chart as an absolute project planning staple. Knowing roles, responsibilities, and who's a part of the team and who's not is key in project success. All right, to the next slide, please. Carola, there we go. Oh, we're moving. Are we on the next one? There we go, transparency. Now that we have clearly aligned strategic value to your project and you've obtained your proper support, the next critical step is to enhance, or in some cases, establish transparency through ownership and accountability. Like everything else about being a project manager, this is tricky. Raise your hand and send me your favorite emoji or an exclamation mark if you've had a project that is impossible to measure value, yet everybody swears the project's important. If you're lucky, these projects are based on some fear factor, mostly driven by compliance, like, the feds are going to shut us down if we don't do it, or your HR or legal counsel has told you in no uncertain terms, we're going to go to jail if we don't abide by this new process. Yes, compliance projects, exactly. Yes. However, if you're like most projects I've had to work on, your project sponsor is the shiny new thing IT guy that wants to brag to his IT buddies about what he's working on the newest technology. But there's really no proven business case, or even worse, if you're the first adapter and the technology is unproven and you have no idea how to measure the realized benefit from this project. So what do you do? And I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds here if anybody wants to contribute. And how do you measure the seemingly unmeasurable project value? The good news is that we're not the only ones. Oh my God, you're struggling to define it. Yep. The good news is we're not the only ones that have that's asked this question. If we could, let me see here, in this quadrant here, right? So this quadrant is coming straight from I think it was the 2016 PMI Thought Leadership series, co-sponsored by Boston Consulting Group, if I recall. 64% of the survey participants believe the best way to realize project value is, here's the perfect triangle: business owner involvement, project management expertise, and executive management involvement, right? That's the perfect triangle to project success and delivery, according to Boston Consulting Group and PMI Thought Leadership. The point is, if you get the right people who set and approve the strategy with business owners who translate the strategy into your project objectives with targeted outcomes for the areas of business, and strong project management who manage the execution of the project to realize those outcomes, you will realize the benefit of the project that you wish to achieve. Again, the trick is above the line, where we talk about the definition of done and defining good. So let's talk more about the definition of done. When my team tells me a task is done or the project is done, I always ask them to define exactly what does done mean. Most of the time, a specific task is completed, but the project by no means is done, meaning we haven't met our business objective and there's more work to be done. The reason why this is usually the case is because the business objective has not been broken down to a measurable metric that has been tracked throughout the course of the project. For example, I'm going to give you a really simple classic example here. Consider a project that creates a new sales tool for the sales managers to improve market share. Assuming the tool is completed on time, within budget, and met all of its original requirements, it would, by classic definition, be considered to be successful and that the project is done, right? Wrong. Yet, it does not truly affect the performance unless the sales force uses it and the company's market share improves. Therefore, if your project dashboard is not measuring market share gains by the sales team, how can you truly argue that the project is indeed, well, done? Let me use simpler terms that my CEO loves to remind me on. I don't care about your projects, I care about the results. How many times have you guys heard that? Using the sales tool as an example, now we know the definition of done, which is improving market share. But the next question is, what does good look like? Increasing market share is good, right? But how do we know if market share is truly being increased because of the new tool? Now we're asking the really hard questions. Now we're asking for real skin in the game by not only the project management team and the business owners, but by the stakeholders. That's right, I mean the users. That's when the project is done. Not until the salespeople tell us we're done, meaning we have to have full adoption and we have to be taking surveys or measurements of their performance during a certain period of time post go live to truly measure if there's an increase in market share. Sounds like Six Sigma principles. Yes, you're right. Well, that's part of my pyramid of risk management, process improvement, and audit background. I have a couple of Six Sigma tools in my tool belt. I know you're shaking your head in disbelief. You're saying there's no way my project team would have access to measure sales performance. Those guys are untouchable. They report directly to the CEO. No way we can measure them, right? Send me an emoji if you guys have ever had any project that dealt with a sales team, if you agree. All right, so this is where the top quadrant for ensuring the project benefits are actually realized, and includes the magical combination, again, that pyramid that I talked about, the business owner involvement, project management expertise, and last but not least, executive management involvement. Unfortunately, there's no project management software tool that can replace the value of having the right people engaged with the right leadership support and the right managers steering the project to success. As Walt Disney would say, there's no magic here. The magic's in the details. So let's get back to our sales tool project. If you got the VP of sales and the CEO actively engaged, and your CEO mandates that the project definition of done is increasing market share, and your VP of sales increase X amount of market share by X period of time, starting after the go live date of the new tool, I'm pretty sure you'd have no problem getting the sales team engaged in training. I'm sure they would be very interested in understanding how the features of this new tool is going to make them quicker, smarter, and better at increasing market share. Ongoing dialogue for the key stakeholders in our top quadrant is critical during project execution. Transparency on how well projects are helping to achieve strategic outcomes creates space for dialogue and gives senior leaders the information and the insight they need to have broader strategic discussions early on and on a continuous basis, which allows them to make those course corrections when needed. This, my friends, is how we win in the fog of war. Having a clearly defined definition of done, followed with measurable definitions of what good looks like, makes for true project transparency and creates the dialogue of accountability and collaboration. The survey I mentioned earlier also goes on to say that the truly mature project management offices is easily defined by having very good communication between the C-suite and project managers. Because you think about it, at the end of the day, the only thing that the PMO really owns is communication. We don't own a product, that's owned by the business. We don't own the solution, that's owned by the SMEs or implementers or developers or, to a large extent, the project sponsor. All we own is efficacy of execution. In reality, we don't actually do anything as project managers. We are master planners, risk mitigators, and facilitators of order, direction, and communication. As I tell my team, I'm just the traffic reporter. I didn't create the jams or the accidents. However, I have scraped up a lot of roadkill to clear the road. Next slide, please. Our last talking point on project managers, on how project managers can align their projects to rapidly changing strategies and guarantee project success, is by establishing expectations and required behaviors. Nothing kills team morale and transparency faster than having a shoot the messenger mentality by senior executives. And I know you guys all understand and have been in that situation at some point in your career. Project teams become reluctant to raise issues when people are addicted to green, meaning they are focused on they're focused too intently on the project staying on track so that they can report as green. And there's really risk of status, I like to call it status watermelon. That means that the green status is reported externally, but the actual status is kept internally within the project management team. To avoid these project pitfalls that ultimately doom any chances of project accountability and progress, project managers have to have strong leadership, both with strategic and business management skills. Being a strong leader with strategic and business skills means you know when to push on a particular issue and when to give way. You also know how to cultivate partnerships throughout the organization by delivering value and getting the right buy-in to sponsor your projects. You also have transparency, fair, balanced, and agreed to methods of communicating results. Again, I tell my team the difference between honesty and transparency. Honesty is typically told through the perception of the individual, and they share their honest feelings about a situation. Whereas transparency is about broadcasting a set of facts or figures at the same time for everybody to view and to derive from their own assessment of the situation. When it comes to managing projects and delivering results, I advise my team to practice transparency versus honesty, because honestly, nobody cares what your personal opinion is. We want transparency, and we'll derive our own set of facts based on the information that's published. Another way to demonstrate leadership is through having deep technical expertise in subject matters that the project is guiding. I recognize that it's not always our luxury as project managers. Therefore, having the right team of subject matter experts that you trust, most important, that you trust your SMEs and that they understand the importance of the project objectives is absolutely critical in establishing expectations and guidance in guiding their behavior. Being able to speak with authority on why one solution is better than another, or being able to drink from the well of lessons learned to understand why we have such established protocols and why they must be followed, is key in guiding team member behavior. Another great way to establish expectations and influence behavior is by establishing a fluid communication cadence that focuses on prioritizing issues and problem solving in an efficient manner. For example, status updates that should be transparent for all to see, that highlights deviations from the project objectives, followed by a series of action plans to correct the course and get back on track. These updates should be as near real time as practical, and again, broadcasted for all relevant members to see. Excluding members in a project update, having side meetings that are not mentioned or not disclosed in larger meetings, and not having a consistent and timely method of communication are key indicators of project failures that are usually well within the control of the project manager. Finally, another great culture shaping trick I use this phrase a lot: fail fast. I tell my team all the time, fail fast by having a good measurement on the project pulse at all times. I want to know immediately when we're failing, and I want to know why we're failing. On the onsets of a real risk, and again, knowing real risk versus red herrings goes back to having those leadership and strategic and business skills. But once a true risk has been triggered and our project is forecasting south, raise the flag immediately. Be smart about it. Include the core team members and all those that really understand the risk, its impact, and its velocity. Again, we have to break down that shoot the messenger mentality by allowing team members to have a safe space to openly discuss what went wrong. I tell my team all the time, guys, ask what, not why. I want to know, what are we going to do about the problem, not why it happened and whose fault it is. I try to keep the team focused on solving the problem at hand. Finally, as project managers, never put too much emphasis or passion on the solution. Always keep the team focused on the objectives that the project is solving for. There are many solutions that can meet similar results. For my projects, I try to guide the team to picking the simplest solution that meets the best or most amount of objectives, at least 2 out of 3, and where the value outweighs the cost. So simple but elegant solution, best match for meeting our objectives, and has the best value proposition where the value is less than the cost of investment. Far too often, the team, particularly the SMEs, get hung up on making the solution work, and they lose sight on focus in driving the project results. The next slide, please. I'm reading some of the chats here. I love the way that you reinforce what I say. Bad news is not like a fine wine. It does not get better with age. Fail fast. Yes, I agree. Fail fast, fail hard, and do it well within. Oh, Colin Powell, that's a good one. I like it. Yeah, it's so important to have those honest conversations, those transparent conversations with your team members, and more importantly, to have a safe space for them to feel comfortable enough to talk about the real problems and the real issues at hand, and to be able to pivot quickly enough to solution and come with an alternative, right? It's one thing to deliver bad news. It's another thing to deliver bad news. However, this is how we solve it. Here's how we can get around it. And it's always option A, B, or C. High, medium, or low. You know, the Toyota, the Avalon, and the Lexus. Whatever analogies you want to use, but it usually comes down to the amen, exactly. We all know the 1, 2, 3 formula, and then you do the pros and cons to weigh out the 3 different options, and boom, you get a new decision, and we're back off to the races of project management. So I think we're on the summary screen now. Yep. So in summary, make sure your projects are properly supported by both the business and executives. If you don't have the support, that's probably a good indication that your project does not drive value. Demonstrate the leadership, pull the plug on your project. If it's truly is value, as someone else said, you know, when you try to kill it, they're going to speak up. And that's when you know you have a project sponsor. If nobody speaks up, there's truly no value to the project. Define what good looks like by having measurable and specific metrics, like enhancing customer experience by X% via the NPS, Net Promoter Score, or some other tool, or increasing sales by X amount. Make sure you know your baselines of what sales are now and what sales will be when the project is done. Some of the decreasing, same with decreasing costs in your operations. Knowing your baseline measurement is just as important as having your future target. You can't even start a project until the baseline is drawn, because if you don't know what good looks like, you can't define your success. And if you can't define success, then nobody knows that the project was well managed. Increasing time to market is another KPI. Again, knowing what your current measurement is, and as well as an agreed upon measurement of what better is. If we increase our time to market by 2 days, is that good? I don't know. How do we know if 2 days is good? I always say I was on the call this morning with one of my team members, and I said, let me give you the example. I can't work on Tuesday. Well, you said that to me as if that's a problem. I don't think that's a problem. That's an observation. You can't work on Tuesday, or you have to work on Tuesday. I believe it was a conversation. You can't work on Tuesday. That's not a problem. That's an observation. That's a statement. That's a fact. You can't work on Tuesday. What's the problem? It's your daughter's wedding. Oh, so you have to work on Tuesday, but you can't work on Tuesday, and because it's your daughter's wedding going on. So you concatenate those 2 facts. You got to work on Tuesday. It's your daughter's wedding on Tuesday. Those 2 independently alone do not propose a problem. Those are observations. Those are facts. Daughter's wedding is a fact, and the fact that you have to work on Tuesday is a fact. You put them together, and now we have the problem statement. Now we know what we're solving for. Now you have, an existential crisis in your house of who's more important, your daughter or your career. So now we all understand the gravity and the impact to those two separately benign and independent statements or observations. So always take information as a baseline of observation and try to find the associated fact that would combine together, make it an impact statement, make it a problem statement. That's how you build that. That's the fundamentals to building out metrics and dashboards. And once you have an agreed upon way to measure your metric, and that everybody knows and agrees to the formula that you're calculating to measure your metric. And I know this may sound silly, but to measure an increase in sales means you have to first identify what a sale is. What product, what segment, what region. You got to go deep and examine your metrics. The success of your project could be at stake if you don't. Have a clearly defined cutoff of when your project is completed is a great way to ensure your stakeholders remain engaged to the end and truly adapt the project into their ongoing operations and becomes part of their success. Once I pass the project off to the business, I try to keep my relationship strong by periodically checking in with my process owners, making sure that their process is working, that they're continually achieving the results that they've always seeking for new ways to enhance and improve the process. This is all just a part of building the strategic relationships and demonstrating leadership throughout the organization. Without those skill sets, you cannot truly be effective in managing a successful project. As project managers, we want to ensure our projects are aligned to the ever-evolving organizational strategy and ultimately to our organization's success. Regardless of the strategy that your organization is taking to weather these extremely uncertain times, as project managers, our job is to be aware of the radical strategy shifts and make sure that we improvise, adapt, and overcome the challenges that threaten our project success and overall ability to deliver value back to the organizations. So my closing thoughts are, don't wait till a crisis to examine the fundamentals. However, if you're in a crisis, don't let it go to waste. And at this point, because we started a little late, I have absolutely no concept of time. So how are we doing on time? Do we have time for Q&A?
Yes, Connie, we have about 8 minutes, 7.
Perfect. All right, so I'm skimming, I'm speed reading some of the chats here and comments, but if you guys got any questions, eight minutes in and counting, I'm all yours. Can we post contact information if people want to reach out to me and take offline conversations? I love talking shop with people. So
I can post it if you want, but they can also click on your icon when we go back to the room, and they can pull up all of your information. Did you fill out the card?
I did. That's right. I got my digital business card, I think is what you guys called it. I'm impressed with this platform. I think it's really great.
It's amazing.
It is.
Questions are coming in. The first one says, can you expand on good crisis go to waste?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this is a crisis, right? We're in uncharted territory. All the models are broken. Whatever models we thought were working don't apply anymore. You're looking at the Dow Jones right now, and we have the third quarter results that came out with overall positive news that the economy is fully restored and we're out of the recession, right? This just came out yesterday. That's why the Dow spiked, but we're crashing. I think the last time I checked, we're about 200 points down, is because we're still in a high level of uncertainty. Next Tuesday is the entire world is going to hold their breath and figure out who's going to be the leader of the free world. So we're in extraordinary uncertain times, and the stakes are grave right now. That we couldn't be any more polar opposite on the direction and the policies that are going to govern the United States over the next probably 50 years. It will be changed in this next term. We all believe it. It's all known to be true. So we're in a state of crisis. I can say with confidence. With all of that being said, don't let it go to waste. This is a great time to take risk. If you're thinking about launching a new product that is delivering virtual experiences like, I don't know, an online conference platform, release it now. Get it out there to market. Be first to market. Take that chance. If you're thinking of using time to do some really known, and well-needed refurbishments to the house, to the ships, right? All the ships are docked right now, so use this time to refurbish them. I was talking to one of my buddies who works for Royal Caribbean, actually. And I said, I'm sure you guys are talking about how you can convert the beds and convert the ships into offshore hospitals and convert the beds into to quarantine. And he said, don't laugh, Connie. We're actually thinking about that. So don't be afraid to let your imagination run, have those brainstorming concepts, because we're in uncertain times. Nothing holds bar right now, and anything that you may have thought was impossible could actually be possible in a time of crisis. So don't let it go to waste. This is a unique opportunity, like Andre Balas, right? He's been thinking about this strategy for God knows how many years, and now is the time to strike. So they always say that success is when preparation meets opportunity. And in the time of uncertainty, if anyone is a Game of Thrones fan, what did Littlefinger say? That chaos is a ladder.
Okay, Connie, I see another question here from Terry Worrell. If it is in the topic per your experience, I'd be curious as to how you compare and contrast transformation versus change management. I don't think some understand the difference.
Okay. Actually, I've never been asked that before. So this is off the cuff, and I like to ponder these kind of questions. So Terry, reach out to me again about a week from now, and I'll probably have a much better answer. But change management is pushing a new release, right? It's taking something that has already been in place, that's already to an existing product, and we're bolting on a new feature. We're adding to an existing platform. Transformation is what Kodak is doing. They're going from being a filmmaking organization manufacturer to being a drug making manufacturing. They're repurposing their raw materials, which is chemicals, and the process of retrofitting all of their mechanics and all of their manufacturing equipment to produce, instead of film, but produce drugs. So it's a total transformation from what you're currently doing and how you're making your money and who your customer is and what their customer experience is to where you're going to be in the future.
Okay, Terry said, thank you very much. I would like to thank you, Connie, on behalf of PMI South Florida. It was a pleasure having you. Very informative session. We're at the end of the time for this period. So I don't know if you have any closing words you want to share before we close the session.
No, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you all have a happy, fun, and safe Halloween. Be careful out there. The October surprises. We still got 2 more days, and it looks like it may be happening. And my usual closing thoughts on a Friday to my team right around this time is it's 5 o'clock somewhere, guys. So go have fun. Enjoy the weekend.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to close out the session, and you'll have 10 minutes, about 10 minutes before the next session starts. You could network with one another, and then you can check out Connie. I think she'll be moving around the tables, right, Connie?
I'll be sticking around, but I'll most likely have my 5 o'clock beverage somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.